It's 12:03 a.m. Your phone vibrates on the nightstand, the screen lighting up your dark room with a number you don't recognize. Maybe you're half asleep, maybe you're wide awake, scrolling through social media to chase away the silence. Either way, you see the notification, unknown number. No name, no context, just a string of digits and a message that reads, "Are you awake?" Most people would ignore it. Some would block the number, roll over, and try to forget. But there's always that itch, that curiosity, that little voice in your head whispering, "What if it's important?" Maybe it's a wrong number. Maybe it's someone in trouble. Maybe it's a friend with a new phone, or a family member who lost their contacts. Or maybe, just maybe, it's something else entirely. Tonight, we're going to talk about why you should never reply to unknown numbers at midnight. Not just because it's inconvenient, or because it's probably spam, but because sometimes, the consequences are far stranger, and far more unsettling, than you'd ever expect. Let's start with the obvious. Midnight is a threshold. It's the dividing line between one day and the next, a time when the world feels quieter, emptier, and just a little bit off. There's a reason so many ghost stories, urban legends, and horror movies begin with a phone ringing in the dead of night. It's not just about the darkness outside, it's about the darkness inside, the way your mind fills in the blanks when you're alone and vulnerable. But this isn't just about superstition. There are real, practical reasons to be wary of unknown numbers, especially at night. Scammers, hackers, and social engineers know that people are more likely to let their guard down when they're tired or distracted. They know that a message at midnight is more likely to catch you off balance, to make you react without thinking. And they know that fear of missing out, fear of danger, fear of the unknown, is a powerful motivator. Let's break it down. Imagine you get a text at 12:03 a.m. It says, "Hey, is this Sarah?" You don't know a Sarah, but maybe you think it's a wrong number. You reply, "Sorry, wrong number." Seems harmless, right? But now the sender knows your number is active. They know you're awake. They know you're willing to engage. And that's all they need to start reeling you in. Maybe the next message is more personal. "Sorry, I'm just trying to find my friend. She said she'd be home by now." Now you're curious. You want to help. You reply again. And just like that, you're in a conversation with a stranger who knows nothing about you, except that you're awake, you're alone, and you're willing to talk. But what if it's not a scammer? What if it's something stranger? There are stories, urban legends, creepypastas, even real police reports, about people who receive mysterious calls or texts in the middle of the night. Sometimes the messages are just gibberish, strings of numbers or letters that make no sense. Sometimes they're more sinister, threats, warnings, or cryptic instructions. And sometimes, the messages seem to know things they shouldn't, details about your life, your family, your secrets. Take the story of the midnight caller. It's an urban legend that's been circulating online for years. The details change, but the core is always the same. Someone receives a call from an unknown number at exactly midnight. The voice on the other end is distorted, barely human. It asks a simple question: "Are you alone?" If you answer, the voice tells you something about yourself, something you've never told anyone. And then the line goes dead. Most people dismiss these stories as fiction, the product of overactive imaginations and late-night boredom. But every so often, someone comes forward with a story that's harder to explain. A text from a number that doesn't exist. A call that shows up on your phone, but not on your bill. A message that arrives at the exact moment you're thinking about someone you've lost. Of course, there are rational explanations for most of these things. Spoofed numbers, glitches in the network, coincidences that feel like fate. But the truth is, we don't like to think about how vulnerable we really are when we're alone at night, staring at a glowing screen in the dark. We don't like to admit that sometimes, the line between reality and nightmare is thinner than we'd like to believe. So why do we reply? Why do we pick up the phone, or text back, or click the link? Part of it is curiosity, sure. But part of it is hope, the hope that maybe, just maybe, this time it's something good. A lost friend, a second chance, a mystery waiting to be solved. We want to believe that the unknown is just another opportunity, not a threat. But here's the thing, the unknown is unknown for a reason. And when it comes knocking at midnight, it's better to let it pass by than to invite it in. In the next section, we'll dive deeper into the psychology of late-night messages, the tricks scammers use to get your attention, and the real-life consequences of replying to the wrong number at the wrong time. Because sometimes, the scariest stories aren't the ones we tell around the campfire, they're the ones that start with a single, unexpected text. Let's talk about what really happens when you reply to an unknown number at midnight. It's not just about the message you send, it's about the information you give away, often without realizing it. Every response, every hesitation, every detail you share is a breadcrumb, a clue that someone on the other end can use to build a profile of you. And at midnight, when your defenses are down, those breadcrumbs can lead somewhere you never intended. Think about it, your phone is an extension of yourself. It holds your contacts, your photos, your location, your habits. When you reply to a stranger, you're not just sending a message, you're opening a door. And sometimes, the person on the other side is waiting for just that. Scammers and social engineers are experts at exploiting human psychology. They know that people are more likely to respond to messages that create a sense of urgency, fear, or curiosity. That's why so many midnight texts start with something alarming or mysterious. Are you awake? I need your help. Did you hear that noise outside? These messages are designed to bypass your rational mind and trigger an emotional response. It's called pretexting, creating a scenario that makes you want to engage. Maybe the sender pretends to be a friend in trouble, or a delivery driver with a package, or even a police officer warning you about suspicious activity. The goal is always the same, to get you talking, to get you to reveal something, to get you to let your guard down. And once you reply, the game changes. Now they know you're real. Now they know you're paying attention. And now, they can start asking for more. Sometimes it's obvious, a request for money, a link to click, a code to share. But sometimes it's subtler. They might ask you to confirm your name, your address, your birthday. They might ask about your family, your job, your routines. Each question seems harmless on its own, but together, they paint a picture of your life. And it's not just scammers you have to worry about. There are stories, documented cases, of stalkers and harassers using midnight messages to intimidate or manipulate their victims. Sometimes it starts with a single text, a simple hello from an unknown number. But over time, the messages become more personal, more invasive, more threatening. The sender might know things they shouldn't, where you live, where you work, who you spend time with. And the more you reply, the more power you give them. But let's step back for a moment. Maybe you're thinking, that would never happen to me. I'm careful. I don't give out personal information. But the truth is, it doesn't take much. A single reply can confirm that your number is active. A single detail can be cross-referenced with public records or social media. And once someone has a foothold, it's much easier for them to dig deeper. Consider the case of the Midnight Texter, a real incident that made headlines a few years ago. A woman received a series of texts from an unknown number, each one more unsettling than the last. At first, they were just questions. Are you awake? Do you hear that? But soon, the messages included details about her apartment, her schedule, even the clothes she was wearing. She never replied, but the messages kept coming, each one a reminder that someone was watching. Eventually, the police traced the number to a neighbor who had been using a spoofing app to hide his identity. He'd pieced together information from her social media, her building's directory, and even her trash. If she had replied, even once, it would have confirmed everything he suspected. Her silence was the only thing that kept her safe. But not everyone is so lucky. There are countless stories of people who replied to a midnight message, only to find themselves caught in a web of scams, harassment, or worse. Some lost money. Some lost their sense of security. Some lost their peace of mind forever. And it's not just individuals who are at risk. Businesses, too, are targeted by midnight messages, phishing attempts, fake alerts, urgent requests for information. Employees who reply without thinking can expose their entire company to data breaches, financial loss, or reputational damage. All it takes is one weak link, one moment of inattention, one reply at the wrong time. So why do we keep falling for it? Why do we keep replying, even when we know better? Part of it is the way our brains are wired. At night, when we're tired or anxious, our ability to think critically is diminished. We're more likely to act on impulse, to seek connection, to respond to anything that breaks the silence. But there's another reason, too, a deeper, more primal fear. The fear of being alone, of missing out, of not knowing. The fear that if we don't reply, something bad might happen. That if we ignore the message, we'll regret it later. It's the same fear that drives us to check the locks before bed, to peek out the window when we hear a noise, to keep our phones within arm's reach even when we're trying to sleep. It's the fear of the unknown, and it's what makes midnight messages so powerful. In the next section, we'll explore the history of midnight calls and messages, from urban legends to real-life mysteries. We'll look at how technology has changed the way we communicate, and the way we're targeted. And we'll hear from people who learned the hard way why you should never reply to unknown numbers at midnight. To understand why midnight messages hold such power over us, it helps to look back at how our relationship with the unknown has evolved. Long before smartphones and text messages, the telephone itself was a source of mystery and anxiety. In the early days of landlines, a ringing phone after dark was never a good sign. It meant bad news, an emergency, or a call from someone who didn't care about the hour, someone who, by definition, was outside the boundaries of normal life. Urban legends grew up around these late-night calls. Stories of the babysitter and the man upstairs, where the call is coming from inside the house. Tales of mysterious voices, wrong numbers that weren't so wrong after all, and prank calls that turned deadly. The phone became a conduit for fear, a way for the unknown to reach into the safety of our homes. As technology advanced, so did the stories. The rise of caller ID gave us a sense of control, but it also introduced new ways to deceive. Spoofed numbers, blocked calls, and anonymous texts made it easier than ever for strangers to reach us without revealing who they were. And as our phones became smarter, so did the people who wanted to use them against us. Consider the case of the phantom texter, a story that made the rounds in online forums a few years ago. It started with a simple message, "Don't look outside." The recipient, a college student living alone, laughed it off as a prank. But the messages kept coming, each one more specific, more personal. Don't answer the door. Don't turn on the lights. Don't call anyone. The student tried to block the number, but new ones appeared, each with the same warnings. Eventually, she called the police, who found no evidence of anyone outside her apartment. The messages stopped as suddenly as they had started, leaving her with more questions than answers. Was it a prank? A glitch? Or something else entirely? The truth is, we may never know. But the story spread, fueled by the same fears that have haunted us for generations, the fear that the unknown can reach us, even in our most private moments. Technology has only amplified these fears. Today, our phones are always with us, always on, always connected. We carry them into our bedrooms, our bathrooms, our dreams. We trust them with our secrets, our schedules, our lives. And in return, they make us vulnerable in ways we never imagined. It's not just about the messages we receive, it's about the data we leave behind. Every app, every website, every social media post is a potential entry point for someone who wants to reach us. And at midnight, when the world is quiet and our guard is down, those entry points can become doorways to something we'd rather keep out. Take the story of the Midnight Hacker, a real case investigated by cybersecurity experts. A man began receiving strange texts in the middle of the night, links to unfamiliar websites, requests for password resets, notifications of logins from distant cities. At first, he ignored them, assuming they were spam. But then his account started getting locked, his contacts received messages he hadn't sent, and his phone began to behave strangely. It turned out that a hacker had gained access to his phone through a phishing link sent at midnight, when he was too tired to think clearly. By the time he realized what was happening, it was too late. Stories like these are more common than you might think. According to cybersecurity reports, the majority of successful phishing attacks happen outside of normal business hours, late at night, early in the morning, or during weekends. Attackers know that people are less vigilant when they're tired or distracted, and they use that to their advantage. But it's not just about technology. There's something deeper at work, a sense that midnight is a time when the rules don't apply, when the boundaries between worlds are thinner. In folklore, midnight is the witching hour, a time when spirits walk, when the veil between the living and the dead is at its thinnest. It's a time for secrets, for confessions, for things that can't be said in the light of day. And so, when your phone buzzes at midnight, it's not just a message, it's an invitation. An invitation to step outside the ordinary, to engage with something unknown, to risk a little piece of yourself for the sake of curiosity or connection. But as we've seen, that invitation can come with a price. For every story of a harmless prank or a wrong number, there's another story of someone who lost more than they bargained for. Someone who replied to a midnight message and found themselves drawn into a web of lies, manipulation, or danger. In interviews with people who have experienced these midnight messages, a common theme emerges: regret. Regret for replying, for engaging, for letting curiosity get the better of caution. Some describe sleepless nights, anxiety, and a lingering sense of violation. Others talk about the practical consequences: lost money, compromised accounts, damaged relationships. But perhaps the most haunting stories are the ones that never find a resolution. The messages that stop as suddenly as they started, leaving behind a sense of unfinished business, a question that can never be answered. Who was on the other end? What did they want? And what might have happened if you hadn't replied? In the next section, we'll dive into the science of sleep, vulnerability, and why our brains are wired to be more susceptible to manipulation at night. We'll also explore the cultural fascination with midnight as a time of danger and transformation, and why, even in the age of technology, some fears never go away. There's a reason midnight feels different. It's not just superstition or the stories we tell ourselves, it's biology. Our bodies and minds are wired to be more vulnerable at night, especially in the hours around midnight. Sleep scientists call this the circadian low, a period when our alertness, reaction time, and critical thinking are at their weakest. It's the time when we're most likely to make mistakes, to misinterpret signals, to let our guard down. Think about the last time you stayed up late, scrolling through your phone in the dark. Maybe you felt a little disconnected, a little more emotional, a little less rational. That's not an accident. As the night wears on, our brains produce more melatonin, the hormone that makes us sleepy. Our prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making and impulse control, slows down. We become more suggestible, more reactive, more likely to respond to things we'd ignore in the daylight. This is exactly what scammers and manipulators count on. They know that a message sent at midnight is more likely to catch you off guard, to slip past your mental defenses. They know that you're less likely to question a strange request, less likely to double-check a suspicious link, less likely to remember the lessons you've learned about online safety. In the quiet of the night, your phone becomes a lifeline, a connection to the outside world, a source of comfort, a distraction from the darkness. And that's when you're most at risk. But it's not just about biology. Midnight has always held a special place in our collective imagination. Across cultures and centuries, it's been seen as a time of transition, of danger, of possibility. In folklore, midnight is the hour when witches cast their spells, when ghosts walk the earth, when the boundaries between worlds grow thin. In literature and film, it's the setting for confessions, betrayals, and revelations, the moment when secrets come to light and destinies are decided. There's a reason so many horror movies begin with a phone ringing in the middle of the night. There's a reason so many urban legends hinge on a midnight call, a mysterious message, a knock at the door when everyone else is asleep. Midnight is a liminal space, a threshold between what was and what will be, between safety and danger, between the known and the unknown. And in the age of technology, that symbolism hasn't faded. If anything, it's grown stronger. Our phones are with us at all hours, blurring the boundaries between day and night, work and rest, public and private. A message at midnight feels different than a message at noon, not just because of the hour, but because of what it represents. It's an intrusion, a disruption, a reminder that we're never truly alone. Psychologists have studied the effects of late-night communication on our mental health. They've found that messages received at night are more likely to be interpreted as urgent, threatening, or emotionally charged, even when the content is neutral. Our brains are primed to expect danger in the dark, to read between the lines, to imagine the worst. That's why a simple, "Are you awake?" can feel so unsettling at midnight, even if it wouldn't raise an eyebrow during the day. This heightened sensitivity can make us more vulnerable to manipulation. Scammers use this to their advantage, crafting messages that play on our fears, our hopes, our need for connection. They might pretend to be a friend in trouble, a loved one in need, or an authority figure demanding action. They might use language that's vague, ambiguous, or open to interpretation, knowing that our tired minds will fill in the blanks with whatever we fear most. But it's not just external threats we have to worry about. Sometimes, the danger comes from within, from our own minds, our own memories, our own unresolved fears. Late at night, when the world is quiet and the distractions fade away, old anxieties can resurface. A message from an unknown number can trigger memories of past traumas, lost relationships, or unfinished business. It can make us question our safety, our sanity, our sense of reality. This is why midnight messages can feel so powerful, so personal, so hard to ignore. They tap into something deep and primal, a fear of the unknown, a longing for connection, a need for answers. And in the darkness, those needs can override our better judgment. Cultural fascination with midnight isn't just about fear, it's also about transformation. In stories and myths, midnight is the hour when curses are broken, when heroes are tested, when new paths are revealed. It's a time of endings and beginnings, of choices and consequences. And in our own lives, it can feel like a moment of truth, a time to reflect, to confess, to reach out for help or forgiveness. But that sense of possibility comes with a cost. When we reply to an unknown number at midnight, we're not just answering a message, we're stepping into a story, a narrative that may not be ours to control. We're opening ourselves to the unknown, to the risks and rewards that come with it. In the next section, we'll hear from people who faced those risks firsthand, real stories of midnight messages that changed lives, for better or worse. We'll explore the aftermath, the lessons learned, and the lingering questions that remain. Because sometimes, the scariest part isn't the message itself, it's what happens after you reply. Let's step into the shoes of those who have lived through the experience. The stories you're about to hear are real, shared by people who, for one reason or another, decided to reply to a message from an unknown number at midnight. Some of these stories end with relief, others with regret, and a few with questions that still haunt the people who lived them. Consider the story of Alex, a college student who was up late studying for finals. It was 12:17 a.m. when his phone buzzed with a message from a number he didn't recognize. The text was simple, "I'm outside." At first, Alex thought it was a prank. He looked out his window and saw nothing but the empty street. He replied, "Who is this?" The response came instantly, "Let me in." Alex's heart pounded. He texted back, "Wrong number." But the next message was even more unsettling, "I see you." Alex called campus security, who found no one outside. The messages stopped, but for weeks afterward, Alex felt watched. He changed his number, but the sense of unease lingered. He never found out who sent the texts, or how they knew where he lived. To this day, he wonders what might have happened if he'd opened the door. Then there's the story of Priya, a young professional living in a new city. She received a midnight call from an unknown number. When she answered, she heard a child's voice crying for help. The call dropped before she could respond. Shaken, Priya called the number back, but it was disconnected. She spent the rest of the night worrying, replaying the voice in her head, wondering if she should have done more. The next day, she reported the call to the police, who told her it was likely a scam designed to elicit a response. But the guilt stayed with her, a reminder of how easily a stranger's message can become a personal burden. Not all stories end in fear. Sometimes, replying to an unknown number at midnight leads to unexpected connections. Take the case of Marcus, who received a text that simply read, "I miss you." He replied, "I think you have the wrong number." The sender apologized, explaining that they were trying to reach an old friend. What followed was a brief but heartfelt exchange about loss, memory, and the strange comfort of talking to a stranger in the middle of the night. For Marcus, the experience was a reminder that not every unknown number is a threat. Sometimes, it's just another person reaching out in the dark. But for every story like Marcus's, there are others that serve as cautionary tales. Stories like that of Jenna, who replied to a midnight message offering a special deal on concert tickets. She clicked the link, entered her payment information, and lost hundreds of dollars to a phishing scam. Or the story of Tom, who received a message claiming to be from his bank, warning of suspicious activity on his account. Half asleep, Tom replied with his login details, only to wake up to find his account drained. These stories are more common than you might think. According to cybersecurity experts, late-night scams are on the rise, targeting people when they're least alert. The tactics vary, some use fear, others use curiosity, and some use empathy, like the crying child or the lost friend. But the goal is always the same, to get you to respond, to click, to share, to let your guard down. And sometimes, the consequences go beyond money or privacy. For some, a midnight message becomes the start of a campaign of harassment or stalking. One woman, who asked to remain anonymous, described how a single reply to a midnight text led to months of threatening messages, unwanted calls, and even someone showing up at her workplace. She changed her number, blocked the sender, and involved the police, but the sense of violation never fully went away. What ties all these stories together is the unpredictability of the unknown. When you reply to a message from a stranger at midnight, you have no way of knowing what's on the other end. It could be a harmless mistake, a scam, a cry for help, or something much darker. And once you engage, you give up a little bit of control, a little bit of safety. But there's another side to these stories, too. For some, the experience becomes a turning point, a lesson in boundaries, in caution, in the importance of trusting your instincts. Many people who have been targeted by midnight messages say they've become more vigilant, more aware of the risks, more willing to say no. They've learned to silence their phones at night, to ignore unknown numbers, to protect their privacy. And yet, the temptation remains. The urge to reply, to solve the mystery, to connect with another human being in the darkness. It's a powerful force, one that scammers and storytellers alike have learned to exploit. Because at the end of the day, we're all searching for something, answers, reassurance, connection. And sometimes, that search leads us to places we never intended to go. In the next section, we'll explore the mechanics of how midnight scams work, the technology behind spoofed numbers, the psychology of social engineering, and the red flags to watch for. We'll also offer practical tips for protecting yourself, so that the next time your phone buzzes at midnight, you'll know exactly what to do. So how do midnight scams actually work? What's happening behind the scenes when your phone lights up with a message from an unknown number at the worst possible hour? To answer that, we need to look at both the technology and the psychology that make these schemes so effective. Let's start with the technology. In the past, it was easy to spot a suspicious call, unknown numbers, strange area codes, or blocked caller IDs. But today, scammers have a whole arsenal of tools at their disposal. The most common is number spoofing, a technique that allows someone to disguise their real phone number and make it appear as if the call or text is coming from a local number, a trusted business, or even someone in your contacts. There are apps and online services that make spoofing as easy as typing in a number and hitting send. This is why you can't always trust what you see on your screen. A message that looks like it's from your bank, your boss, or a family member could actually be coming from a stranger halfway around the world. And at midnight, when you're groggy and your guard is down, you're less likely to notice the subtle signs that something is off. But spoofing is just the beginning. Scammers also use automated bots to send out thousands of messages at once, hoping that even a small percentage of people will reply. These bots can generate personalized messages using information scraped from social media, public records, or previous data breaches. That's why some midnight texts feel eerily specific. They're designed to make you think the sender knows you, even if they don't. Once you reply, the scammer knows they found a live target. From there, the tactics can vary. Some will try to keep you engaged in conversation, asking questions to gather more information. Others will send links to fake websites designed to steal your passwords, install malware, or trick you into sending money. Some will escalate quickly, using threats or emotional manipulation to pressure you into acting before you have time to think. This is where psychology comes into play. Social engineers, people who use deception to manipulate others, are experts at exploiting human behavior. They know that fear, urgency, and curiosity are powerful motivators, especially late at night. A message that says, "Your account has been compromised," or "Someone is trying to reach you," can trigger a panic response, making you more likely to act without thinking. But it's not just fear that scammers use. Sometimes, they play on empathy or loneliness. Messages that seem to come from someone in distress, a lost child, a stranded traveler, a friend in need, are designed to bypass your skepticism and appeal to your desire to help. And at midnight, when you're alone and the world is quiet, that appeal can be hard to resist. So how can you protect yourself? The first step is awareness. Knowing how these scams work makes you less likely to fall for them. Here are some red flags to watch for. Urgency or threats. Messages that demand immediate action, threaten consequences, or claim you're in danger are almost always scams. Legitimate organizations don't contact you this way, especially not at midnight. Requests for personal information. Never share passwords, PINs, or other sensitive information over text or phone, no matter who the sender claims to be. Unfamiliar links. Don't click on links from unknown numbers. Even if the message looks official, it could lead to a fake website or download malware onto your device. Too good to be true offers. Midnight is not when you'll suddenly win a contest, get a job offer, or receive a special deal. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Emotional manipulation. Be wary of messages that try to make you feel guilty, scared, or responsible for someone else's problem. Scammers use these tactics to cloud your judgment. Spoofed numbers. Remember, caller ID can be faked. If you get a suspicious message from a number you recognize, verify it through another channel before responding. If you receive a message that feels off, the best response is no response. Don't engage, don't reply, and don't click. Block the number, report it to your carrier, and move on. If you're worried it might be legitimate, say, a bank or a delivery service, contact the organization directly using a verified number from their website. It's also a good idea to adjust your phone settings. Enable spam filters, silence unknown callers, and use two-factor authentication on your accounts. These small steps can make a big difference in keeping you safe. But perhaps the most important tool is your own intuition. If something feels wrong, trust that feeling. Midnight is a time when your instincts are heightened, even if your mind is tired. Listen to that inner voice that tells you to be cautious, to wait until morning, to protect your boundaries. In the next section, we'll explore how midnight messages have become a part of our digital folklore, how stories of strange calls and texts have evolved in the age of social media, and why these tales continue to captivate and terrify us. We'll also look at the blurred line between fiction and reality, and how our collective imagination shapes the way we respond to the unknown. Midnight messages aren't just a modern threat, they're a new chapter in an old story. For as long as people have gathered around campfires or whispered in the dark, we've told tales about the unknown reaching out to us when we're most vulnerable. In the digital age, these stories have found new life, spreading faster and farther than ever before. Social media, forums, and messaging apps have become the new campfires, and the stories we share there are just as chilling, just as captivating, and just as hard to forget. Think about the last time you scrolled through Reddit's r/nosleep, or watched a TikTok about a creepy text exchange. These stories go viral for a reason, they tap into something universal. The fear of being alone, the anxiety of the unknown, the thrill of a mystery that might be lurking just outside your window. Midnight messages are the perfect vehicle for these emotions. They're short, direct, and easy to imagine happening to anyone, including you. Some of the most popular digital urban legends of the last decade have started with a simple text or call at midnight. There's the infamous Red Room legend, where a mysterious message invites you to visit a website that supposedly leads to a live stream of unspeakable horrors. Or the Momo Challenge, a viral hoax that claimed a disturbing character would contact children at night, urging them to harm themselves or others. These stories spread not because they're true, but because they feel true, because they play on our deepest fears about technology, privacy, and the limits of our own safety. But it's not just the stories themselves that matter, it's the way we share them. In the age of social media, a single screenshot can become a sensation overnight. A creepy text exchange, a voicemail from an unknown number, a series of missed calls at 12:01 a.m., these artifacts become digital campfire tales, passed from person to person, each retelling adding new details, new twists, new layers of fear. This collective storytelling has a powerful effect. It blurs the line between fiction and reality, making it harder to tell where the story ends and real life begins. When you see a friend post about a strange midnight message, or read a thread about someone's terrifying experience, it's easy to imagine it happening to you. The fear becomes contagious, spreading through likes, shares, and comments until it feels like everyone is just one message away from their own midnight encounter. But there's another side to this digital folklore, a sense of community, of shared experience, of facing the unknown together. When people share their stories, they're not just trying to scare each other, they're warning each other, offering advice, building a collective defense against the threats that lurk in the shadows of our screens. In a world where technology can make us feel isolated, these stories remind us that we're not alone in our fears. Still, the line between caution and paranoia can be thin. The more we hear about midnight messages, the more likely we are to see danger in every unknown number, to jump at every late-night notification. This can lead to anxiety, sleeplessness, and a sense of helplessness that's hard to shake. It's important to remember that while the risks are real, most midnight messages are harmless, wrong numbers, automated alerts, or simple mistakes. But the stories persist, and for good reason. They serve as modern-day cautionary tales, reminding us to be careful, to trust our instincts, to think before we reply. They also reflect our changing relationship with technology, the way our phones have become both a source of comfort and a gateway to the unknown. In some ways, midnight messages are the perfect symbol of our digital age. They're intimate and anonymous, personal and universal, real and imagined all at once. They remind us that even as technology connects us, it also exposes us, to each other, to strangers, to the mysteries that still linger in the dark. And as long as we keep telling these stories, they'll keep evolving. New apps, new platforms, new ways to reach out and be reached. The details may change, but the core remains the same, a message from the unknown, arriving when you least expect it, asking you to make a choice. Will you reply? Will you ignore it? Will you share your story, or keep it to yourself? These are the questions that keep us up at night, long after the screen has gone dark. In the next section, we'll look at the impact of midnight messages on our mental health and well-being. We'll explore how constant connectivity affects our sleep, our anxiety, and our sense of safety, and what you can do to reclaim your peace of mind in a world that never truly sleeps. The effects of midnight messages go far beyond a momentary scare or a lost night's sleep. For many, the anxiety lingers long after the phone stops buzzing. In a world where we're always connected, the line between rest and vigilance has blurred. Our devices, meant to keep us safe and informed, can just as easily become sources of stress, worry, and even fear. Sleep experts have long warned about the dangers of screen time before bed. The blue light from our phones disrupts melatonin production, making it harder to fall asleep and stay asleep. But it's not just the light that keeps us awake, it's the content. A single unsettling message, a strange notification, or a missed call from an unknown number can send your mind racing, replaying worst-case scenarios over and over. The result? Restless nights, groggy mornings, and a cycle of fatigue that's hard to break. For some, the anxiety becomes chronic. The fear of missing an important message or being caught off guard by a threat can lead to hypervigilance, constantly checking the phone, jumping at every buzz, struggling to relax even in the safety of your own home. This state of constant alertness takes a toll on both body and mind, increasing stress hormones, raising blood pressure, and making it harder to focus during the day. It's not just adults who are affected. Teens and young adults, who are often the most connected, are also the most vulnerable. Studies show that late-night phone use is linked to higher rates of anxiety, depression, and sleep disorders among young people. The pressure to be available 24/7, to respond instantly to every message, can create a sense of obligation that's impossible to escape. And when those messages come from unknown numbers, the stress multiplies. But the impact isn't just individual, it's collective. As a society, we're grappling with new forms of digital anxiety, new questions about privacy, safety, and trust. The stories we share about midnight messages reflect these anxieties, amplifying them, but also helping us process and understand them. When we talk about our fears, we take away some of their power. When we share our experiences, we remind each other that we're not alone. Limit screen time in the bedroom, keep your phone out of reach, or even out of the room if possible. If you use your phone as an alarm, consider switching to a traditional clock. Practice mindful response. If you do receive a message from an unknown number at night, pause before reacting. Take a deep breath, assess the situation, and remind yourself that most messages can wait until morning. Talk about your fears. If midnight messages are causing you anxiety, talk to someone you trust, a friend, a family member, or a mental health professional. Sharing your concerns can help you process them and find solutions. Educate yourself and others. The more you know about how scams and social engineering work, the less power they have over you. Share what you've learned with friends and family, especially those who may be more vulnerable. So what can you do to protect your mental health in a world that never truly sleeps? The first step is to set boundaries, with your devices, with your time, and with yourself. Here are some practical tips. Silence notifications at night. Use your phone's do not disturb or bedtime mode to silence calls and texts from unknown numbers while you sleep. Let trusted contacts through, but give yourself permission to ignore the rest until morning. Create a digital curfew. Set a time each night when you put your phone away, ideally at least 30 minutes before bed. Use this time to wind down, read, or practice relaxation techniques. Remember, you're in control. Your phone is a tool, not a master. You have the right to set boundaries, to ignore messages, to protect your peace of mind. It's also important to recognize when anxiety becomes overwhelming. If you find yourself unable to sleep, constantly worried about your phone, or experiencing panic attacks, reach out for help. There are resources and professionals who can support you, and you don't have to face these fears alone. The world may never truly sleep, but you can. By setting boundaries, practicing self-care, and staying informed, you can reclaim your nights, and your sense of safety. Midnight messages may always be a part of our digital folklore, but they don't have to control your life. In the next section, we'll explore the future of midnight messages, how technology is evolving, what new threats and challenges may arise, and how we can prepare ourselves for whatever comes next. Because as long as there are unknown numbers and curious minds, the story isn't over yet. As technology continues to evolve, so too do the ways in which midnight messages can reach us. The devices we use are getting smarter, more integrated into our daily lives, and more capable of both protecting and exposing us. The future of midnight messages isn't just about texts and calls, it's about a world where the boundaries between online and offline, day and night, are increasingly blurred. Consider the rise of smart home devices, voice assistants, smart speakers, connected doorbells, and even smart appliances. These devices are designed to make our lives easier, but they also create new avenues for intrusion. Imagine receiving a voice message through your smart speaker at midnight, or a notification on your fridge's display from an unknown source. The more connected we become, the more entry points there are for the unknown to reach us. Artificial intelligence is also changing the game. Scammers are already using AI to generate more convincing messages, mimic voices, and even create deepfake videos. In the near future, you might receive a midnight call that sounds exactly like a friend or family member, but is actually an AI-generated imitation. The challenge of distinguishing real from fake will only grow more complex. But it's not all doom and gloom. Technology is also giving us new tools to fight back. Advanced spam filters, AI-driven fraud detection, and biometric security features are making it harder for scammers to succeed. Companies are investing in better privacy controls, and governments are enacting stricter regulations to protect consumers from digital threats. The key to navigating this future is adaptability. We need to stay informed about new technologies and the risks they bring, but also about the solutions and safeguards that are being developed. It's a constant game of cat and mouse, but one where awareness and education are our best defenses. One promising development is the rise of digital literacy programs. Schools, workplaces, and community organizations are teaching people how to recognize scams, protect their information, and respond to digital threats. These programs are especially important for vulnerable populations, seniors, children, and those less familiar with technology, who are often the primary targets of midnight messages. Another trend is the growing emphasis on mental health and digital well-being. Tech companies are introducing features that encourage healthy phone habits, screen time limits, bedtime reminders, and tools to help you disconnect. There's a growing recognition that constant connectivity isn't always a good thing, and that it's okay to set boundaries with your devices. Looking ahead, we can expect midnight messages to become more sophisticated, more personalized, and potentially more invasive. But we can also expect our defenses to improve. The future will likely bring new forms of authentication, voice recognition, facial scans, behavioral analysis, that make it harder for imposters to break through. We may see the rise of digital guardians, AI assistants that screen messages, detect threats, and even respond on our behalf. But no matter how advanced our technology becomes, the human element will always be the most important. Our curiosity, our empathy, our desire for connection, these are the qualities that make us vulnerable, but also the qualities that make us resilient. The stories we tell, the lessons we share, and the communities we build will continue to shape how we respond to the unknown. So what can you do to prepare for the future of midnight messages? Stay curious, but stay cautious. Keep learning about new technologies and the risks they bring. Update your devices regularly, use strong passwords, and enable two-factor authentication wherever possible. Be skeptical of messages that seem urgent, emotional, or too good to be true, especially if they arrive at midnight. And most importantly, remember that you're not alone. The challenges of the digital age are shared by all of us, and together, we can build a safer, more resilient world. Share your experiences, support each other, and don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. The unknown will always be out there, waiting for the right moment to reach out. But with knowledge, preparation, and a little bit of caution, you can face whatever comes your way, even if it arrives at midnight. In the final section, we'll bring everything together, revisiting the stories, the science, and the strategies we've explored. We'll leave you with a clear message: why you should never reply to unknown numbers at midnight, and how you can reclaim your nights, your peace of mind, and your sense of safety in a world that never truly sleeps. So here we are, at the end of our journey through the shadows cast by midnight messages. We've explored the history, the psychology, the technology, and the very real stories that make a simple buzz in the dark so much more than just a notification. We've seen how a single message from an unknown number can unravel your sense of safety, disrupt your sleep, and leave you questioning what's real and what's imagined. We've learned that the risks are not just digital, they're emotional, psychological, and sometimes even physical. But we've also seen that knowledge is power. The more you understand about how midnight scams work, the less likely you are to fall for them. The more you talk about your fears, the less power they have over you. The more you set boundaries with your devices, the more you reclaim your nights and your peace of mind. It's easy to feel helpless in the face of the unknown. It's easy to believe that you're alone, that you're the only one who's ever felt that chill when your phone lights up at midnight. But the truth is, you're part of a much larger story, a story that's still being written, one message at a time. Every time you choose not to reply, every time you warn a friend, every time you share your experience, you're helping to shape that story. You're building a world where caution is not just a reaction, but a habit. Where curiosity is balanced by wisdom. Where the unknown is respected, but not feared. So the next time your phone buzzes at midnight, remember what you've learned here. Remember the stories of Alex, Priya, Marcus, Jenna, and all the others who faced the unknown and came away changed. Remember the science, the way your mind works at night, the tricks that scammers use, the power of a single moment of hesitation. Remember the folklore, the digital campfire tales that remind us we're not alone in our fears. And most of all, remember that you have a choice. You don't have to reply. You don't have to engage. You don't have to let a stranger's message steal your sleep, your safety, or your sense of self. You can silence your phone, block the number, and go back to dreaming your own dreams. Because midnight is a threshold, a place where anything can happen, but also a place where you decide what happens next. It's a time for endings and beginnings, for letting go of what you can't control and holding on to what matters most. It's a reminder that even in a world that never truly sleeps, you have the right to rest, to disconnect, to protect your peace. So why should you never reply to unknown numbers at midnight? Because your safety, your sanity, and your story are worth more than a moment's curiosity. Because the unknown will always be there, waiting for someone to answer. But tonight, it doesn't have to be you. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If you found this story helpful, share it with someone you care about. Start a conversation. Set your boundaries. And the next time the unknown comes calling, you'll know exactly what to do. Sleep well. Stay safe. And remember, not every message deserves a reply, especially at midnight.